Hello, my name is Claire Wyborn and I'm a doula in Melbourne, Australia. And I've been a doula for 15 years. I have 3 amazing children. They're all adults now, and my eldest daughter, she has 2 grandsons, 5 and 4.5. My son is not yet married, but soon. And my youngest daughter has a 19-month-old baby. And all their births were really, really different. As soon as I was pregnant, I knew that I was going to have a home birth. I just knew that that's what was on my horizon. Engaged an amazing midwife. And my biggest inspiration was Ina May Gaskin's book, Spiritual Midwifery. And I just devoured that book completely and just knew that trusting my body was my key to an amazing birth. And it happened. So that was, I just knew that birth was really simple and you don't interfere and just let things happen. And then I had a miscarriage with my next pregnancy. And then I waited a full 12 months before I fell pregnant again because with a miscarriage, you actually lose quite a lot. It takes more out of you sometimes than a normal pregnancy and birth and labour. So I was about 6 months pregnant and I was planning another home birth, and my midwife, she's palpating my tummy, she's listening, she's feeling and listening. And she says to me, "Claire, you've got 2 babies." And I go, no way, I don't have twins in my family. And she goes, I can pick up 2 different heartbeats. So my mind instantly went, this is crazy. So out of, duty of care and being responsible, we went and engaged an obstetrician, needed to have a scan, and I went back a few weeks later, or a week or so later, for the results. And, he goes, yeah, you've got a boy and a girl, 2 placentas, 2 eggs, 2 sacs, 2 babies, and they look absolutely amazing, and we'll schedule you in for a cesarean. And I went, no. These babies are coming out my vagina. And he goes, well, not in my hospital, they're not. And I went, no worries. You give me no other option than to continue with a home birth, and that was my original intention anyway. So I went back to my midwife and quizzed her from A to Z. Have you delivered twins before? What if this happens? What if that happens? And she was amazing. I fully trusted in her skills and ability, and she'd had surprise twins, so I was not worried about the care that she was going to give to me. So I went to 39 weeks and maybe 3 or 4 days, so almost full term. And literally when I sat down, I could not see my knees. I was massive. So I had 2 really healthy babies inside. I labour pretty quickly. So as soon as contractions began, I called her, and it was the dead of winter and it was pretty cold. And I said, come on, let's please come over. And within about 3 to 4 hours, I was in really, really good established labour and pushing. And the bag of waters for my first was actually bulging out. And I was in a supported squatting position, and which felt really grounding and powerful for me. And we're all expecting this big explosion of waters to happen. And just as my baby was crowning, I had the most full-bodied orgasm. and my head was thrown back, and it was like, whoa. And it was just insane and amazing. Out came my son, and it was just intense and so amazing. And yeah, so the next challenging bit was, feeding him and then having more contractions for my next baby. So I fed him for a little bit, but had to then pass him off to my mum, who was with me, and she looked after him while I was getting ready to birth the next one. And Hannah was born within an hour, and sadly she was stillborn. So from the height of feeling absolutely incredible to the depth of what do I do with a stillborn baby was so profound. And I was in this no man's land of not knowing how to be. I needed to be sad, but I didn't want to be sad because I was happy. And anyway, time passed, and we, this whole time an ambulance was called and she was taken into the hospital, and, an autopsy was done, all these things. And it wasn't long after that we had the friends that were witnesses at our wedding, and they were also expecting twins. And we went to visit her in the hospital after she'd had her baby, and she's sitting in the hospital holding one baby, and next to her was another woman who had had twins, also holding one baby. And both of these women had had cesareans, and both of their second twins were stillborn. And that really hit me. It's like, wow, if I had have done this, or I had have done that, and if I had have had a home birth, or I had have had a hospital birth and a cesarean, I could have ended up with the same result. So that's been a really interesting guide for me through since then for the rest of my life, really making decisions about, well, if I do this and it feels right for me, I might end up with that same result. Or if I do this intervention and don't feel right about it, I still might end up with the same result. All my births till now have taught me so much. And then my last daughter, I guess because, there was a lot of unresolved grief, and they say breech babies need to stay near the mother's heart. Amber was a footling breech, so it's one of the most risk breech births. And, home birth midwives wouldn't even engage with me. So it's like, I have to go to hospital. So, I had to engage with an obstetrician and all the works. And he says, oh, we'll schedule you in for a cesarean. I went, no. My baby can choose her own birth date. Thank you. And because I do birth quickly, as soon as my water started leaking, and as soon as I, felt the contractions starting, it's like, oh, all right, I got to go to hospital. Anyway, I got in there and I was in charge. I said, can you please check to see if my baby hasn't turned? I kind of knew she hadn't, but can you please check to see that, do I need to have a cesarean, or can, we birth this baby vaginally? And he said, look, I've just counted 5 toes. And I said, I'm totally fine with that. I'm happy to go and have a cesarean. So, I've gone from an amazing home birth with a normal birth to carrying twins unexpectedly, to an amazing orgasmic birth, to losing a baby and a stillborn. and then to a full-on cesarean. I'd had all my babies by the time I was 25. And after that, I'd helped a couple of girlfriends in hospital and at home have their babies, not knowing that there was a thing called a doula. And it wasn't till, I was probably in my early 40s that I was at a crossroads in my life. I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and my life kind of was crumbling, and my marriage was falling to pieces. And usually when your life falls to pieces, it's falling into place. And a girlfriend of mine begged me to come along to a motivational speaker. And it was like I was the only one in the audience. And he was saying, if you find yourself at a T intersection in your life, you don't know whether to go left or to go right. He said, find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you've had personal experience with and something that you would love to give back to other people. So I'm sitting there at lunch and thinking, and it's like, if I had my time over again, maybe I would have loved to have been a midwife, a home birth midwife. And it's like, I'm too old to go to uni and study, and I don't want to work in the hospital system. And not long after that, I was at a health retreat and met an amazing woman. And a couple of weeks after the retreat, she came and we hung out together for the day. And she says to me, what are you going to do with yourself? And I said, I don't know. Maybe I could do direct entry midwifery. I don't know. She goes, why don't you become a doula? I went, what's that? She goes, yeah, you can, you support women through pregnancy and birth and the weeks or months afterwards. And I said, sign me up. How do I do this? So that was my start to becoming a doula, and that was middle of 2008. And I've been a very busy and successful doula for about 15 years. It was around 2012 when I watched a documentary called Gorilla Midwife and another documentary called Orgasmic Birth. And after watching those two, it's like, oh man, I gotta meet these women. I gotta meet Deborah Pascali-Bonaro. And I've got to meet Ibu Robin. And not really realizing at the time that these two incredible women get together every year in Bali and run a doula retreat called Eat, Pray, Doula. So it was like, that's where I'm going. So for my 50th birthday, I gifted myself a solo adventure. Like, I'd never traveled overseas before. So it was a bit nerve-wracking, but I said, as long as somebody is at the airport holding a sign with my name, I'm coming. And Eat, Pray, Doula for me was so profound. This is my fourth Eat, Pray, Doula. I can't stay away. But what's profound about it for me is it's a deep immersion into sitting with amazing women from around the world, hearing their stories, knowing that, in little Melbourne, Australia, I am making a difference. Just like so many other amazing doulas around the world are making a difference. And sometimes, doula work can be quite isolating. And unless you find a doula buddy or a backup doula that you can work really closely with, sometimes you can feel a bit alone. And coming to Eat, Pray, Doula gives you that community and that connection of, okay, there might be a doula that's in the United States or in the UK or Europe that you really connect with. And if you're at a birth at like 2 a.m. in the morning and you're wanting some support, you can connect into our WhatsApp group and you can say, hey, is anybody awake? I need some support. And you'll get a response from somebody. And it's, you know, widens your support network. It's just incredible. Eat, Pray, Doula is also a massive deep dive into really discovering your passion, and it fills my cup so much that I can continue doing what we're doing, because it is a very physically, emotionally, mentally and spiritually demanding passion, being a doula. And to do your work well, your cup needs to be full. And Eat, Pray, Doula just fills that cup for me.